Hello, my name is Dan Shavetta. The title of this presentation is The Catholic Church in Sexual Abuse Litigation, An Insider's View. For 20 years, I defended the church in sexual abuse cases. The announcement also says that I will be discussing sexual matters frankly. As you're listening to this presentation, you might notice a lack of passion or a lack of outrage over some horrible things. It's going to be pretty bloodless. I've seen a lot of sexual abuse situations, including during my first career as a social worker, and to be frank, some of the things I saw then make the kinds of things priests were doing seem pretty mild. Also, it's important from either side to look at the facts with a clear and necessarily cold eye. In front of the judge and in front of a jury, you can get passionate and pound on the table, but in developing your side of the case, you have to be objective and methodical. Also, I've designed this presentation for the benefit of non-Catholics. I've noticed that some people have incorrect ideas about the church. If you're Catholic or raised Catholic, some of this you might already know, but maybe not. I'm surprised by how many Catholic lawyers are ignorant about the issues I'm going to discuss, or at least are in denial. I'm directing part of this presentation to you. I am bringing this out in the open. The presentations I've seen on this topic have been either one-dimensional or one-sided. I want to bring more aspects to the discussion by talking about cases I've actually litigated, without mentioning any names, of course. I'm going to spend the first part of this talk on church teaching. That's because the starting point for understanding how to litigate these cases is understanding the sexual abuse crisis, which involves understanding the nature of the Catholic priesthood and how it came to be. As you know, with very few exceptions, Catholic priests must be male and celibate. They're not even allowed to masturbate. You might have heard several reasons why. It has nothing to do with requiring total dedication without the distraction of a family. It's a rule that started only in the Middle Ages. First, if a priest left behind a widow and children, they had a claim on his property. If he was celibate, it all went to the church. The second reason had to do with notions of purity. Sex, although admitted to be necessary, because without sex there are no children, was seen as not quite evil, but too impure for a priest. As for why priests are male, the early reasons were because women were too stupid to be priests, they were impure because of menstruation, they were morally weak, etc. You see a list there on the slide. The church could no longer hold these opinions as we got into the 1960s. The current teaching from 1976 is that priests have to be men because at Mass, the priest stands in the place of Jesus, and only men can look like Jesus. That is hardly a less stupid reason. The last couple of popes didn't even want to talk about it. In fact, it's often estimated that a majority of even American priests don't agree with the doctrine, and the great majority of lay Catholics don't agree with it either. In 2014, Pope Francis brought together bishops from all over the world to discuss reforming the Church's teaching on the family. That sounds like satire, doesn't it? Teaching on family was going to be developed only by men who have decided that family life was not for them. Priests, by any objective standard, should be the worst possible people to go to for advice on family or on marriage or sex. They've already decided that married life is not for them, and they've never had a sex life, at least not a happy one. Another wide, yawning gap between doctrine and real life, which is related, involves birth control. Without getting into the details, the Church's teaching on that topic is illogical, legalistic, out of touch with reality, and how people with a happy sex life actually act, and by now it's practically a laughingstock. Almost no Catholics use the officially proved natural family planning. They use contraceptives of one type or another. It's estimated that 75% or so of American priests, that's the priests, don't agree with church teaching on this issue. So there's a big gap between what the laity and even most priests believe and official Catholic doctrine. The celibate male priesthood is something imposed by the hierarchy. It is unnatural and results in a priesthood filled with men who have a stunted view of sex, and whether they admit it or not, if they're not allowed to even masturbate, sex starts to obsess their minds in neurotic and twisted ways. There are even preparatory high schools for boys thinking of going into seminary. Think about what's going through the mind of an 8th grader deciding to go to one of these prep schools. What kind of 13-year-old boy, hormones surging through him for the first time, is going to think he wants a life without sex? This is a kid who's afraid of something. If I was in charge, I would say, go, debauch yourself for 10 years, 20 years, like St. Augustine. And then, when your fears have been faced, demystified, and your head is clear, then come back and apply for the serious training required to be a proper Catholic priest.